Twitter criticism, reading Russia Today, the most courageous country in history, the most battling people, most tough people. Well, there's an article called Russia Gate by Tariq Cyril Amar. Russia Gate, Revenge and the Rotten Core of US Power. July 24. Home World News. The years-long deception maintained by highest-level US officials has been put to rest, though not for the sake of justice and democracy. As I said, by Tariq Cyril Amar, a historian from Germany working at KOS University, Istanbul, on Russia, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe, the history of World War II, the cultural Cold War, and the politics of memory. There's a photograph of US President Donald Trump. Be real. It is not hard to see that America, as it really exists, not the dream version, is neither a democracy nor a country with genuine rule of law. That's because democracy, where the label is impossible. What? Just read it again, this. That's because democracy, where the label, it's impossible. For starters, with elections awarded in private money and bizarre electoral colleague making sure that Americans do not actually have votes of eventually numerically equal weight when electing their single most powerful official, the president. Yeah, I got some misunderstanding in this sentence, but I got the idea. It's not a democracy. The rule of law can only exist where citizens are equal before laws that apply to everyone in the same just manner. This is a challenge everywhere, but the US is an almost comically egregious case of legal bias, obscurantism, masquerading as timelessly reinterpretable case law, and inequality by status, wealth, ethnicity, and skin color. Just ask that crackhead, porn addict, and shady businessman from an infamous clan who is currently not in prison but giving expletive-laden interviews instead. I guess he's referring to Donald Trump. But I don't get why to be addicted to pornography is so bad. The US, simply put, does not operate the way it claims to operate. It takes an extraordinary amount of naivety on the scale of believing in Santa Claus or an honest Vladimir Zelensky not to notice that much. You know what I just remember? China is condemning the US for not allowing aid to Gaza, to Palestinians. The US is not allowing the aid to enter Gaza, and Palestinians are starving, tens of thousands. Like, what is more difficult to figure out is how politics and power actually work in America, and most of all, who is really in charge. We have, for example, recently witnessed a presidency in which severely senescent Joe Biden claimed to be to be, but clearly could not be in command. So who was and who is in general? Yeah, nice question. Yeah, who is behind the scenes? That ultimately is perhaps the single most disturbing question raised by recent developments around the rotting corpse of Russiagate, aka Russia Rage. In its heyday between 2016 and about 2020, Russiagate was the shorthand for a conspiracy theory that dominated US politics and mainstream media, causing mass hysteria. Its details were exceedingly complicated, but its core was extremely simple. The claims that Russia had manipulated the American presidential elections of 2016. Yeah, that's even right here in Chile, absolutely unimportant country. They still talking about that. Anyway, that it had done so to facilitate the first victory of Donald Trump, and finally that Donald Trump's team had colluded with Russia. The power of this preponderantly factually false and entirely misleading narrative was such that it overshadowed much of Donald Trump's first presidency and contributed greatly to a catastrophic and very dangerous decline in the always challenging relationship with Russia. Indeed, there even is a plausible connection to be made between the mass madness of Russiagate and the reckless policy of provoking and waging a proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. Russiagate, in other words, did not only harm the US, it harmed the whole world. In what respected, think of it as the political equivalent of the 2008 US banking crisis. The mess was American, the fallout global. Now Trump is back for a second term and bent on revenge against his detractors, not only but especially over Russiagate. In his usual refreshingly candid style, he has announced that, quote, "It is time to go after people, finger former President Barack Obama for treason, and gleefully shared an AI-generated video showing Obama being arrested in the White House." Such a moron. Such a stupid behavior. Anyway, just before that typical Trump outburst, his director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, released a freshly declassified report produced in early 2017 by the Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives that addresses what really happened in 2016 when, quote-unquote, Russiagate was initially invented. This release was clearly meant to be a sensation. Gabbard accompanied it with press statements and a detailed thread of X posts, bringing out its most explosive aspects. Among them, the key finding is that Russia did not work to make Trump president. Boom, the basis of, quote-unquote, Russiagate gone, just like that. And who was to blame? Gabbard made clear that Russiagate was not a cluster fiasco born of mere incompetence, but a monster intentionally produced and carefully nurtured. She accused, quote-unquote, top national security officials, including FBI Director James Comey, CIA Director John Brennan, Director of National Intelligence James Kapler, as well as Obama himself, of deliberately creating and spreading the impression of Russian election meddling in favor of Trump by manipulating the actual contradictory findings of the intelligence agencies. Gabbard uses strong language, quote unquote, coup against Trump, the quote unquote weaponizing of intelligence, quote unquote treasonous conspiracy, and quote unquote betrayal concerning every American. Those mainstream media, such as the New York Times, that are among the worst offenders in spreading the quote unquote Russiagate hoax, have already pounced on this language to, in essence, poo-pooing Gabbard's charges as hyperbolical. Poo-pooing. Never read that. Don't fall for that deflection. Gabbard's way of presenting her case does have a political edge. Of course it does. And if they wish, the old quote unquote Russiagators. This Russiagate is a Democrats narrative, isn't it? But Democrat narratives doesn't sound conspiratory. They sound like sounds respectfully, you know, because of Hollywood. And if they wish, the old Russiagators can nitpick over her terms to their heart's content. But that makes no difference to the fact that what was happening is an enormous blight on U.S. politics, implicating the intelligence services as well as other state agencies, the media, and indeed former President Obama. Gabbard may be laying it on a little thick, or not actually, but even without any embellishment, the fabrication of Russiagate was the real humongous scandal, and it must be dealt with at long last. That's it.